You're tuned into the Counterflow Podcast, home of dissident voices,
unapproved opinions.
But you gotta get ready.
You ready?
Now here's your host
and humble narrator,
Buck Johnson. Let's go.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back once again to the Counterflow Podcast. As always, I am your host and humble narrator, Buck Johnson, coming to you out of Lockhart, Texas. And today, we finally have Father Hans Jacobse on the podcast. I've received many a request to get this gentleman on, and he's here. He runs the St Paisios Brotherhood, and we are talking about brotherhood, marriage, men, women, relationships, the ortho bros, and things in this nature. This is a fantastic discussion. You guys were right to ask me to have him on. I feel this will not be the one and only appearance by Father Hans. So, without further ado, for the first time on this show, Father Hans Jacobse, welcome to the show, sir. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. I've had lots of requests to get you on here, so I'm glad to finally do it. Since it is your first time, I'll let you give whatever introduction you think my audience will find pertinent, and we can obviously talk about the St Paisios Brotherhood, and then we'll jump in from there.
Okay. I consider myself an early adopter of Orthodoxy. I came in with the wave in late 80s, 90s. It's when the evangelical Orthodox came in. I was not a part of that, but was contemporaneous to it. And so when they were coming into Orthodox, I was very, very interested in watching that happen. I went through my evangelical phase, but had abandoned that for different reasons. Never left Christ, but there was an insufficiency to that. In college, I went to school during the Reagan years, and I checked out the Newman Center, but that didn't do it for me either. There's just something about that. I don't belong here. And what happened was I ran into Alexander Solzhenitsyn's Harvard address in the school library. I reached a point where I said, you just got to make up your mind. I mean, I couldn't find a church, right? I couldn't find where I fit. But as I said, never left Christ, but it came to me one day, and I think it was God himself, the Holy Spirit himself. I was walking out of a class. I said, you got to make up your mind. Either you leave Christ or you start all over. And I thought, I've got to start all over. Everything I learned, everything I thought, it was all up for grabs, right? I had to start over. I had to be certain. I had to be secure in my thinking. I had to know that what I believed was really true. And about a week later, I ran into the Alexander Solzhenitsyn's Harvard address, and I saw how deep Christianity really reaches into culture. And I saw that this address drew from the well springs of a very deep Christianity, and I just resonated with it. I said, this is what I'm looking for. What is it? And so I knew about Solzhenitsyn. I was kind of a cultural conservative in that Solzhenitsyn mold, kind of worked myself into that. Subsequently, you realize his dependence on Dostoevsky and on Orthodox and all that, but I didn't have a clue. Found out about Russian Orthodoxy, thought Orthodoxy was only in Russia. That's what I thought. But I read all of Solzhenitsyn's stuff, everything, every essay. And, years later, I read Dostoevsky and I realized, this is where the thinking comes from, the analysis of the West. Mm. But the analysis in the Harvard address was so trenchant because I could feel it. I felt it in high school. I could feel it. My friends got tired of me because I'd always talk about the decline of the West. But I could feel it not crumbling, but dislocating. I could feel it dislocating. And I came to see that religion is the ground of culture. It has to be religion. It has to be religion. But nobody really understood this. But I like my friends a lot. Anyway, right? And then I met this girl. So I started reading this and that, and I met this girl, and I told her about my great discovery. And she said, "Well, I'm Orthodox." I said, "What?" And she was like a good grad student. She was a grad student at the time. I was doing my undergrad. My first time in college was a crash and burn, so I came back to do it right this time. Was doing it right, and she was in grad school. And like a good grad school student, she didn't go to church much. So we started going to church together. And then a year later, we got married.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, and that's how I ended up in the Greek Orthodox Church. I was with the Greeks for a long, long time, and because she's Greek. Her mother was Greek. Her father was the first convert in the Greek Orthodox Church in Minneapolis in the 1950s, and he came out of kind of a wild Pentecostal background. And even marrying a non-Greek at that time was very controversial. But my wife's mother married him. He became a convert, loved the church, didn't understand the Greek, but loved the church, and then it just started from there. It started from there. It took me a long time to find orthodoxy. But I say early adopter because I was very attuned to the culture, but I was very affected by it at the same time because I was one of the lost kids, right? And that was a brutal, painful experience. But I knew once I found Christ and started pulling myself out of it, that it would turn into something good. I would not wish that period, that the turmoil, that kind of turmoil on anyone, but it would turn out good. And it really has now later on in my ministry, because the guys I deal with coming into the church come out of the same just brutal existential chaos is really what it is. And it really, really is. It pulls the soul apart. Right. And so I look back, I don't know how God works, but in retrospect, I can see that even the hardships and the tragedies can be turned into a good.
Oh yeah.
And that's what I do now, speaking of St Paisios Brotherhood. And I love doing it. So early adopter, went through all that. So I think I can help the guys who are coming in now, coming out of chaos, coming out of darkness, coming out of just soul-wrenching dislocations. Very painful, very painful. And a lot of guys, I tell them, when they come in, I said, it's soul pain brought you here. And I understand the soul pain, right? And this is why they're coming into the Orthodox Church. It's not only a safe harbor, it's the promise of restoration. That's what they're looking for.
Where's your parish located now?
Fort Myers, Florida.
That's what I thought. Okay. And which jurisdiction?
I'm with Antioch now.
Gotcha. Very cool. And I want to ask you, you mentioned briefly you had a quick evangelical phase. What brought you out of that, or why was it just a phase?
Okay. Well, I went into it because I needed the structure. Okay. And I just needed the structure. What I did for my early 20s, I just worked for 4 years. I worked. That's all I did. It's almost kind of like going into the military. I just worked, and the work was hard, was laborious, but I knew I just kind of needed it. And that structure gave me a community. And we were basically, all of us, what brought us together, it was kind of a communal situation. We were just all kind of lost men, lost in the culture and eaten up by it. Okay. And we all needed healing. And I think it was the hand of God. It was far from perfect, but it was safe. All right. Because if you don't know where to go for an answer, right, you're really just lost. And if you don't have a community, you're really just lost. It was kind of a a community of people really burnt by the culture, but looking for Christ, looking for truth, discovering that Christ is the truth. And it was a place to heal, quite frankly. It was a place to heal, for the soul to heal. And that's what happened. But I healed up, and I realized that some of this is a little wacky. Okay. That there was no real future here. Some of it was a little wacky, but the good of it was that it brought me just pulled me out of the culture for a while so I could just stabilize and grow up.
Mm-hmm.
And then learning the self-discipline through work. Work is a great teacher, and the work was hard. As I said, laborious, was physical work, but it taught me a whole lot of discipline, self-discipline. I working with the guys now, I say, your body's really mastering you. You got to learn how to master your body, and work is the fastest route to that kind of maturity. And that's what happened to me. So as I'm pulling myself together, as I'm healing, as I'm thinking about my future, I realize that I have to get out of here and I have to move on. And I did. But move into what religiously I didn't know, because quite frankly, the evangelicalism just wasn't sufficient, wasn't deep enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't like, casting aspersions on people of faith. I just don't.
Sure.
There's a lot of good people,
right,
that help me out. There's a lot of good people in evangelicalism, but it can't touch man to the level of the soul. There's no possibility of transformation there. Behavior modification, yes. And for a young guy, the rules are good. It's good to obey the rules and learn what they are. But there has to be an interior transformation in order for the person to develop and to become what I call the person that God created him to be. And that clearly was not there. I understand all this in retrospect. At the time, of course, it was all part of a search. So me and a close friend, decided we're going to go back to Minneapolis and we're going to go to college. And we became brothers. And we held each other up. It's probably him. His name's Keith. It's probably because of him and I was able to stay on the straight and narrow, right? And I did that for him in return. And he became a doctor and I became a priest. And we were good friends.
Okay. And you're in the hospital for the soul, and he's a doctor. I love it. It's you said, what a phrase, brutal existential chaos.
Yeah.
Is what a lot of young people are going through. Was it similar back in those days, the existential chaos, as it is now? What's changed over the years, or is it all sort of the same, just different flavors?
What's changed is that the culture itself has fragmented more. And so I had the memory of some stability, cultural stability, where things were predictable. All of this started to change when I was really young, right? I kind of changed with the 60s, 70s. And what's different now is that the people coming of age now have no cultural memory of a more stable age. Because when growing up is kind of like just becoming more aware that the world is a larger place. It starts with your family, goes to your neighborhood, and then goes to your whole world. But the assumption that young people made, and I did this too, was that the way it is now is the way it's always been and the way it always will be. You just have no historical perspective. Traveling can help with that. If you travel to different cultures, it kind of penetrates that mythology of immaturity, of inexperience. So the difference is that we had a memory of a more stable time, but today there is no such cultural memory. And so it's very, very unstable and destabilizing for guys coming of age now. And that destabilization starts very young.
I know you guys are familiar with the Harmony Orthodox channel on YouTube. It's one of the absolute best channels for Orthodox content out there. You know what else they do? They make icons, Harmony icons. It's an Orthodox Christian studio crafting unique wood-burnt icons with hand-applied gold leaf. Each icon is laser engraved into real wood, giving it that warm, wood-burnt look. You can actually see the texture of the engraving and the gilding. It's not printed. The gold leaf is applied by hand using either 24-karat real gold or imitation gold, depending on the icon that you choose. Because they're made from natural wood, Harmony offers a free replacement if an icon warps over time or if the gold leaf tarnishes. They've got unique, thoughtful gifts, obviously for friends, family, me if you'd like, whatever. But you can go to harmonyicons.com/counterflow and get a deal. Check out Harmony's hand-gilded icons, harmonyicons.com/counterflow. Is the influx over the last several years into the church the biggest the church has seen in, let's say, your generation? I know obviously there's got to be many times in the ancient past where it just was the assumption that you were part of the church, but it's always often talked about the last 5 years, the influx of people. Is this similar to the influx you were talking about when you came in?
No, it's much, much bigger.
Okay.
Much bigger. I think it'd be very difficult for a single person back in the 90s to come into the church alone. Very difficult. Most converts came in through marriage, like I did.
Okay.
But now people are just coming in off the street. It's nobody. Well, I have to say, I saw it coming. I knew it was coming like 8 years ago. I could feel it. I'm pretty attuned to what the culture's doing, and I can see it. When COVID was happening, so many people saying, "Oh, this is the end, and we're going to get authoritarian, totalitarian, to get something like that." But my gut says something different, and I always tell people this. You can ask my friends. I said, "No, that's not what's going to happen. What's going to happen is we're going to go through this COVID period, and what the end of it is going to be, and I termed it the Great Reveal." I could sense that the corruption would be revealed, and this was a necessary thing to go through. I saw this with the people coming into the church, and I would tell other priests this. I told my bishop this. People look at me funny, but I could feel it. I could tell. I said, "Get ready, they're coming." And went to a deanery meeting with the other priests, and all the priests started saying, "All these young men are coming into the church." And then they remembered that I told them this. And they joked around and said, "You're a prophet, you're a prophet." I said, "No, I just know which way the culture's going. I can tell." Right? And so I'll give you a prediction. Okay? We are riding the crest of this huge wave, bigger than we think. But the wave has not yet broken the surface of the water. This is going to be huge. You're going to see Orthodoxy being able to speak to this massive cultural shift that we are undergoing. And I have another prediction for you. Moses the Black, the movie,
yes,
is coming out at the end of the month, is going to reach the Black community, and you're going to see young Black men start coming into the Orthodox Church. It's already starting in my parish.
Wonderful. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing when I saw that preview. I hope, it's just another facet to reach other people that might not have necessarily been reached in the last few years. So I think that's great. I want to talk about, well, first, before we even get into challenges young men face, what is the St Paisios Brotherhood, and talk about what you guys do?
About 12 years ago, I went through a wrenching change in my life. Okay, but a necessary one. And everything came into question. Why did I become a priest? What am I doing? Everything. I rethought everything. It compelled me to rethink everything. It took about 3 years. I used to be a culture warrior, and a pretty effective one too, except that I noticed that I wasn't changing anyone's mind. I was just kind of articulating things a little bit better for those who already believed. Okay. There's a role in that. I mean, it's called polemics, right? There's a role for that, but I go, no, this is not what I should be doing. A young man came into my life. Well, what happened is I started a new parish. I moved over to Antioch, and they said, you got to be attached to a church. And I said, how about if I start one? And they said, okay. Antioch loves that. I had no idea how much work it was going to be, but it's successful. It's St. Peter's Orthodox Church now in Fort Myers. We had a 23-year-old kid who I loved. This kid was in a car accident, had a traumatic brain injury. The surgeon said 94% of the people with his injuries don't survive. He was healed by St Paisios. I didn't know who St Paisios was at the time. He had a friend, Jeremiah had a friend in Greece who grew up with St Paisios in Saruti, the village outside of Thessaloniki. Somehow we got in contact. He told me what to do. I did it, and St Paisios intervened. His brother was one of the kids of the culture, a lot like I was at his age, in complete emotional lockdown, not connected to anything. He came into my life, and he was the first, right? And then more men just kind of started drifting into my life. I started dealing with them one-on-one. And I learned a lot. It was like a laboratory of learning for me. It was about 5 years. Father Patrick Henry Reardon, great priest, older now, very close. He's retired, but a great man and a great priest, heard about it and said, come up to Chicago, speak to my conference. We're doing a conference on restoring patriarchy, and I want you to speak. I said, okay. And I want you to talk about what you're doing. So my talk was called Pastoring Young Men into Manhood. It was the first time I ever spoke publicly about what I'm doing. And a lot of it deals with these pornography, things like that, things that men really struggle with, because I had learned how to help guys out of that. And it was a very successful talk. The response I got clued me into that what I had discovered in helping men in this area was very powerful. Before that, I really didn't have a clue. It was the response of people that I respected, right, that clued me in. I've got something really powerful here. They decided to put that talk as the free element of that entire conference. Everything's behind a paywall on their website except that for that talk. That talk went on a slow viral, and men from all over the country started calling me up. And I was just on the phone all the time, just talking to different men. And then a priest and a deacon heard about it. They said, I want to come down to Fort Myers. We want to come down to Fort Myers. We got an idea. They came down. They said, you got to start up an organization. Now, I thought to myself, well, yeah, I mean, I've started a lot of stuff. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But the common denominator is it's a ton of work, right? And my church was starting to take off. And do I really have the time for it? Do I even want to do it? So I said, just let me think about it. Let's keep talking about it. Let me think about it. I didn't say no right away, but I wanted to make sure it was the right thing to do. Meanwhile, I go to Greece. I take my wife and my daughter to Greece. We have a history there. We've lived over there for a year. I learned Greek there. We did a program called Ionian Village in the Greek Archdiocese for 5 years, bringing kids over. We know Greece. And so we went there, and I also met Dimitri, the man who told me about St Paisios. And Dimitri and I went to different monasteries. And Dimitri's a priest now. Father Amphilochios is his name. And I walked into one of the monasteries, and the gerund of the monastery saw me, came up to me. I could feel him read my soul. I'm telling you, I could feel it. And I didn't resist it. I let him do it. I mean, I sense that this man is a benign presence. He's more than a benign presence. He's a magnanimous presence. Okay? There's no threat here. And he comes and he says in Greek, he goes, "You will lead many men in America into the Orthodox Church, and Elder Paisios, he was elder at the time, and the Theotokos are going before you." And that went right through me. And I went, oh, I got to go back and I got to start the Brotherhood. So when I got back to Greece, called up a few friends who were in it with me. Gary Metz, the main one, he's the executive director of the Brotherhood now. And we started the Brotherhood. And what is the Brotherhood? The Brotherhood is, look, I know what's going on inside these guys, right? And I've learned subsequently that it's a brotherhood that provides the healing. God works when men can connect with other men, then that connection becomes a conduit through which God's healing grace flows. And these men come in damaged in the way that I was damaged. I'm not reading my experiences into them, but I am saying I understand the pain, I understand the conflict, I know how Christ can heal because I've experienced it. And that's the reason for the Brotherhood, and that's what we do. And the Brotherhood is growing, and we're struggling to keep up with the growth.
I bet.
But so far, it's successful.
And do you guys hold calls? How does that work with sort of keeping the Brotherhood itself alive?
Well, our kind of main communications locus is Telegram. Mm-hmm. We got 900 guys on there, every day. I don't keep up with it. I've got 5 guys who moderate it for me. I just don't have time to read it.
Sure, yeah.
And then we have what's called battle teams, where it's goal setting and it's brotherhood building, that type of thing, connecting men with each other. And they meet weekly, and they have, how are you doing in this part of your life, that part of your life, that sort of things. We have what's called boot camp. That is where you learn just the basic Orthodox ascetical practices. Pray in the morning, pray in the evening. This is what you do if you're going to become Orthodox. Boot camp is a required course for ASI, Achieving Sexual Integrity. These are guys, this is a program for guys who are struggling to overcome pornography and self-abuse and that type of thing, right? So that is a popular and effective course. It's an 8-week course, and we go through it. We're always developing. We're going to have ASI battle teams. These guys get real close. Now, what we see around the country is that this is generating local brotherhoods. Now, I'm not in ASI. St Paisios Brotherhood doesn't exist to establish brotherhoods and control them. Okay, any resource that it offers, anybody can take and copy. We want to see brotherhoods established because it's through the brotherhood that men heal. And strong men also make for a strong church.
Right.
These men heal and their parishes become strong. That's what's happening here in Fort Myers and other parishes. It's really quite remarkable. Rod Dreher's Benedict option. I like the idea, but I just wasn't going to, pick up stuff and move next to the monastery. It wasn't going to happen. Mm-hmm. But the idea of a community, a separate community inside a larger community, that's a good one. And that's what's developing. These men here locally become friends with each other. They help each other with jobs, that type of thing. They get married. They have kids. You've got a stable community within the larger community of Fort Myers growing. And in that sense, the Benedict option works. Okay? That's right. He's right about that. He's right. And then these men protect each other because your friends are men on the same path of seeking virtue, of becoming better men. And the beautiful thing is, too, that, they start healing up, catechize them, baptize them, and something kicks in where they begin to flourish. They really begin to flourish. And that's they come in broken, and a year or two later, they're flourishing. It's really a beautiful thing to see. Back to the brotherhood. So we see men wanting to build these separate brotherhoods locally, face to face, which is exactly what we want. I think that's our mission, from the Lord himself. Encourage this because the brotherhood is going to become the locus of healing for these men. Brotherhoods are. And so we help them get established, and that's where we are now. Like I say, we struggle to keep up with it, but the needs, they present themselves, and that we meet the needs, and out of that we establish organizational structure that works. Meanwhile, and this is beautiful too, the guys who come in, they start healing up, and they want to be part of the work, part of the leadership. So we have a labor pool too that we can draw from, and it's the guys themselves. That's what the brotherhood is.
As you guys know, the team at Podsworth Media has worked with me for a long time producing this show. A big part of that over the past couple of years has been them using their Podsworth app to make the audio sound clean, level, professional, even when the raw recordings were super sketchy, which mine can be sometimes. In fact, this one that you're listening to right now is super sketchy. I took this microphone sock off here just to show you how crappy it will sound, except when they put it through the Podsworth app, it sounds beautiful. I've got this annoying white noise maker going on. It's driving me crazy. If you want to hear how bad this recording is before they put it through the Podsworth app, you can hear the full before and after demo for yourself at the link in the description. The app recently got a huge update, and it's better than ever. So good, in fact, that it can take almost any atrocious voice recordings and make it sound great. They remove background noise. It cuts down on plosives. It fixes clipping when your gain is too high. It reduces reverb, removes clicks, pops, improves tone, and the level of the dialogue is even and consistent. So if I move around like this, which I sometimes do when I get excited, it'll fix all of that. It's super simple. Go to podsworth.com, click Get Started. Drag and drop your audio files or open them right from your smartphone browser. Customize your settings if you want, but honestly, the default works great for most podcast recordings. Here's the cool part. Enter code BUCK50, BUCK50 for 50% off of your first order. No account needed, just email and payment. Then you get the download link in your inbox with your cleaned up files. It's perfect for podcasts, YouTube videos, sermons, homilies, audiobooks, anything like that you want to sound legitimate and professional. Remember, use code BUCK50 for half off your first order. And you're supporting this show. Thank you, guys. I had Metropolitan Jonah on a month or two ago, and I asked him about common issues young men coming in face. Actually, it's just said young people, generally speaking. And he did mention pornography. And I have to admit, the stats that he gave were sort of shocking. He said something along the lines of 90 to 95% of young men have an issue with it that come to him. And it was like 70% of young women had an issue with it that come to him. And obviously, you mentioned it. So you've seen that as an issue. Mm-hmm. Is it the biggest issue that young guys are having a problem with as they come to the church?
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you how it starts in adolescence, right? I'll tell you, pornography comes from the pits of hell. It really does. Because what it does, it shortchanges a man's ability to mature and grow into a deeper manhood.
Yes.
You know, back before pornography was this big of an issue, marijuana was a big issue. And a kid would come up to me and say, well, I'm trying to get past the marijuana. And I would always ask him, well, when did you start? Well, when I was 14. Then I know that his maturation stopped at 14. Okay? So with the pornography, I'll tell you, it's not porn so much. It's self-abuse.
Okay.
Okay. The addiction is to self-abuse. Porn becomes a masturbation accelerant. Okay. We have a term called PMO, and we borrowed that from the manosphere. Porn, masturbation, orgasm. It's one unit. Okay. But it starts in early adolescence because it starts as a way to cope with the hardships of growing from boyhood into manhood. And why is it this way? Well, one is the collapse of fatherhood. Boys don't have mentors. And when boys don't have mentors, they mentor each other. But that usually doesn't turn out very well. That's what the gang situation is in our inner cities. It's boys trying to raise boys. They form their own community because they don't have family, or that more precisely, they don't have father. But that afflicts the culture generally now. And then with the prevalence of pornography, it's really an evil thing. And our blanket acceptance of it, it's just so irresponsible because these kids are hurt by it. But with the prevalence of pornography, it's easier to escape the pressure through PMO because the boy has no one to tell him what he needs to do, and how to do it. So it starts out as distraction and relief, and then turns into a habit, and then turns into a vice. And every guy has plans on quitting. But the problem is, by the time he's ready to quit, knows he has to, which usually happens in late teens because he's starting to perceive how this is holding him back. It's so habituated that it's not something you can just stop. And so then he really becomes aware of that this is an issue and he's got problems, but how to overcome it. Well, I'll tell you how we do it, and I think it really differs from the Catholic or Protestant or secular approach. What is it? What's really going on here? What's really going on here is that two separate desires got entangled and confused. So, and I credit this to St. Maximus the Confessor. Okay. He writes, all desire, even inordinate desire, is grounded in the desire for God. All right. Think about that. All desire, even inordinate and unlawful desire, is grounded in the desire for God. So what we need here is a healing. And we need a healing of desire. We need an untangling, in this particular case, of two desires. The first desire is this, is man is created to create. Man has a native desire to create. And we all know this because we've all done work. Say you've done a job, you've created something, you've fixed something, whatever it is you've done, and you've done a great job, and it fills your soul with gratification. The reason it fills your soul with gratification is because you are doing what you are created to do, to create. We are created in the image and likeness of God, and the first self-revelation of God to us in Scripture is that He is creator. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Man is a creator. And that's a creative drive. That's a drive in him. That's a desire that must be met. The reason it's a desire is because it's intrinsic to him. God made us that way. Now, we also have the sexual desire. The sexual desire is very creative because its purpose is telos. It's telos in the Greek. That's a great word that encompasses purpose, destiny. It's a beautiful word. All those powerful meanings in that one word. The telos of the sexual desire is the creation of new life, properly expressed in the marriage bond. What happens? What happens is the boy who has to learn how to become a man, and he knows this and needs guidance. He's driven by this creative power, but he doesn't know how to get there. He's a boy learning how to become a man. Only men can teach boys how to become a man. Women can't do it. Women cannot do it. Has to be a man. He starts the pornography and self-abuse as a means of dealing with the frustrations of not knowing how or not being able to succeed in that manly destiny, and keeps going back there for relief. And what he's seeking in it is the gratification that comes through work. He's seeking it through the gratification of the orgasm. Because that's a manly act too. It's just it's expressed not in its proper context, so it becomes a destructive context in terms of his own maturation. That's what happens. And those two get really bound together. And if a man, okay, now he's in his late teens, he's in his 20s, some men are in his 30s, they want to get past this vice. They want to break this deep habituation. What you have to do is you have to untangle the desires. That's what happens. Now, men who are habituated in this, they will not flourish to the measure that they can. You hear the thing about the failure to launch. Every time I hear that, I know what's going on. They're living life vicariously. They're playing video games because video games feel real. Vicarious experience feels as real experience, at least close enough, right? But the real experience is that they're just sitting in front of a screen pressing buttons, okay? And that's what's going on. They're living vicariously, and that need for that fulfillment, that manly fulfillment, is being filled artificially. That's what happens. If a guy is living in the basement, you hear all the caricatures. The first thing he's got to do is got to get off the porn, man. You got to get away from the computer, and you got to get off the porn. But take my course, and it'll help you do it. Right?
Yes.
That's what's going on. Yeah. Metropolitan Joan is correct, by the way.
Goodness.
It's the age.
Yeah. Dating for young men who become Orthodox or who are coming to the church. Sometimes, I think in this modern culture, dating prior to coming to the church was already sort of an issue. Yeah. And certainly once you become Orthodox, then there's some tricky things to navigate as you're dating. What sort of challenges are guys facing in that realm?
Well, the guys are messed up and the girls are messed up. Okay. So let me phrase it in a nicer way. The guys need healing, so do the girls. Because the girls are just as confused by our really hostile to humanity culture as well. This is what I do to the guys. I say, first you work on yourself. You make yourself ready. Number one, I don't see any point in dating if the purpose is not in the end to get married. Right?
Yes.
If you're ready for marriage, then date, then court, whatever you want to call it. Okay? But not before. I don't understand why you want to get into a relationship with a woman that's just going to end up in heartbreak. Why would you do that? Okay, there has to be a purpose, has to be an end. Number one. Number two, you got to get yourself together first. You got issues. You got to work on those issues. You got to get yourself stable, and you've got to get yourself established. That makes you attractive to a woman. What a woman wants is stability. Feminists hate that, but feminists don't understand reality. Women want stability. And who can give them stability? It's a stable man. So work on that. So you got issues in your life. You know, you're underperforming. You're underperforming. You don't look that good. You don't keep yourself clean. And I tell guys this, not right away, but the guys listen. I just tell them, it's time. I go up to them and say, it's time to up your game. You're a good-looking guy.
Mm-hmm.
So why aren't you shaving? Why is your beard so scraggly? Why aren't your clothes clean? Right? And they listen. And they listen. And you see the rebirth of the man, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my advice really to men is you work on yourself first. You work on yourself first. And then when you're ready to get married, when you feel like I'd like to be married now, this is when I need to be married, then we start looking for the woman.
And then what is that sort of, I know there's issues now once the man's ready and he's looking for the woman, like you said, women need healing too. What are they facing?
They're facing, well, it's different with women, and I'm better with men than I am with women. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But women have a harder time with, I think, overcoming their past, right, and their woundedness. The real sad thing is that women believe, this is a general thing, but a lot of women believe they have to put out sexually for the man in order to find love. They really believe that. And of course, that's not true. And if anything can kill a relationship, it's jumping into the sex. That happens a lot. So women, men get hard. Men get hardened. And they're wounded, but they harden with the wounds. Women are wounded, and they lose all self-respect and self-confidence. The nervousness, the neuroticism, all that stuff increases. And so what women need, and this hasn't happened yet, they need to be nurtured in the presence of other stable women to learn how to become a woman. And I'm waiting for some women leaders to emerge to take care of the women. I get that question all the time. Well, what about the women? And my answer is I'm waiting for the leaders to emerge, because the ministry to women will not be like a mirror opposite of the brotherhood.
Right.
Their needs are different.
Mm-hmm.
Women need nurture. Women need assurance. Women need maternal love to heal, just like the men need paternal love to heal. That's how it's going to come.
Yeah, well put. The manosphere, you mentioned a term from it earlier. I know it doesn't seem as big as it was just a few years ago,
right?
But there was some bleed over, some crossover between young Orthodox men and being involved in the manosphere. Is that something you try to pull them away from? Do you accept some of the manosphere things? Is it rules without Christ? What are your thoughts on that whole scene?
I get the manosphere deal. I get why it's happening. It's a cultural reaction. I'm not alarmed by it. I'm really not. There are excesses there. Of course there are. But people are going, oh, manosphere. No, what do you guys expect? Masculinity has been denigrated all these years, right? A man tries to learn how to be a man, and then he's attacked for being toxic, all that stuff, right? It's kind of a mess, but culture's a mess. So I understand why it's there. And like you say, it's not what it used to be, but these things always have a short shelf life anyway. And I just let it go. So what do I do though in the Brotherhood? No politics. We're not doing politics.
Okay.
The reason we're not doing politics is because everybody else is.
Yes.
And guys love politics.
Yes.
And, if we do politics, that's all we're going to talk about. I like politics, right? But no politics. And I do that here locally too. We're not doing politics, guys. It's not that politics are evil. is that it's so compelling. That's what we talk about, and it becomes divisive.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
and any excesses of the manosphere, but there aren't that many.
Right.
But any excesses, no, we just don't talk about that here. If you want to talk about that, go somewhere else. We're not doing that here. And the reason for that is because of its divisiveness. It's because it's polarizing.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the only difference.
I want to ask about actual married couples that come to the church already married, and then become Orthodox.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the things that married couples might face that you've sort of helped with?
Well, like I say, I mostly do guys.
Okay.
But it's the man beginning to understand his role.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Guys are really confused, and they're confused because of the cultural chaos. Okay, but one other thing I tell the men, look, the man and the woman, they want the marriage to work, but they just don't have the tools. Okay, they just don't have the tools. And so a man has got to understand who he is, right? And if a man understands who he is, the woman will begin to understand who she is and her role. Feminism, cultural Marxism, everything that's kind of stripped of any human feeling just sees the male and female as units. And the most you can have is healthy transactions. That's basically it. But that doesn't nourish the soul, especially when the children come. What do? How do you raise kids? We don't know, okay? So I start with the man, because the man will be frustrated because the marriage isn't going the way that it should be going, right? And, well, how do I deal with my wife? I tell her this, I tell her that. And I said, well, maybe you should not tell her stuff, because the feminists are going to hate me for this. But this is reality. We got to deal with reality. I say, if you stabilize, your wife will stabilize. So if you stabilize. Now, you got issues you're dealing with. You don't bring every issue to your wife.
Yes.
You just don't do that. You go to other men. And you don't try to reason your wife into submission or to understand. That's not the way women gain security. Women become secure when they feel you stabilizing. Women draw their stability from you by osmosis. So you work on yourself. And you talk to other men, right? And that's done a lot for a lot of marriages because it's ontological, right? It's the way God designed it. Man is to lead. He is to lead. But to lead does not mean to dominate. It means to become the stable, centering force in the family. That's what it does. And the woman will start to feel more secure. As the woman feels secure, the children feel more secure. So it's about relational dynamics. It's about what's necessary for the guy to learn and to do. All right. Now, with the women, these are all primary things. They're fundamental, but they're primary. They almost always come up. I say, you got to quit nagging him. Look, you got to quit nagging him. I understand you don't feel secure. And that drives a lot of nagging in women. It's this feeling of insecurity. But I say, you nag your husband, you're just going to drive him away. You're going to drive him away. And I'll ask him, I said, have you noticed that the more you nag, the more distant he becomes? She goes, yeah. And you feel like you're being abandoned, right? When he does that. She goes, yeah. I said, he's going into his cave because a guy is just not constitutionally able to endure nagging. You're emasculating him. Stop doing it. I'm that emphatic with them, right? So it's kind of a reordering of a revamping of the relationship, but in its proper ontological ordering. And that brings peace and stability. And these are basic things that I think people used to learn from their parents when marriages were relatively stable. But marriages aren't relatively stable anymore.
Right.
So they have to be taught. I'm not good at marriage counseling. I'll tell you, because I just don't have the patience for it. I'm okay with triage. And, you got to be a real patient person to do marriage counseling. And so I don't do much of it. I just say, this is what you got to do. Go do it. But sometimes that's enough.
Mm-hmm. In your lengthy time now in the Orthodox Church and being a part or the head of the St Paisios Brotherhood, this influx of young men, the term zealots, or the nature of the young men has been thrown around a lot, ortho bros and things like this.
Yeah.
Have you seen reactions with people already a part of the Orthodox Church that welcomes these young zealous men in a negative way or tries to push it out? Are there ways that you've had to deal with this in your own parish or just with the church in general, where maybe young, fired up, testosterone-filled young men come in, they're zealous on their new thing they found. Some of the older people are like, this isn't the way, please exit stage left if this is what you think of orthodoxy. Is there a royal path to be found here? How have you dealt with some of that?
Well, in my parish, I've had guys like that. I just have to kind of sit them down and say, I had one guy, he went into the kitchen and he said, well, he telling the ladies in the kitchen, well, this isn't sufficiently fasting food. There was some cheese and something, right? And you can imagine the ladies in the kitchen. You don't tell the ladies in the kitchen how to cook. You should don't do that. It should be like an 11th commandment. But I took him aside. I said, listen, don't go in the kitchen. Don't go in the kitchen. Don't tell the ladies how to cook. It's not your business. And yeah, but there was cheese on there. I said, yeah, I know. I said, but a person who doesn't want to eat the cheese doesn't have to eat the food. That's how we do it. We're not going force from the top down. Everyone is free to choose for themselves what level they want to fast at. Okay. And they listen. Okay. Now, in my parish, I don't have it's not a problem because I have a brotherhood every Friday night. I get 25 guys. We meet every Friday night. And there's 2 churches combined, St. Paul's and St. Peter's. These guys do a lot of the work at the church, right? We need something done. They volunteer. And people see that. We just replaced all the ceiling tiles in the social hall. 3 guys did that, right? We need stuff cut down. We needed some trees cut down. They did that. They see what they do. These guys want to contribute. Give them the opportunity to contribute. So locally, it's not really it's not. Now, nationally, look, I'm not down on the orthobros. I get the issues, but I'm not down on these men. I think some of it is a fair response because it is going to change the culture of the church. It is, right? But welcome these men in. Welcome them in and be patient with them because they're coming out of a relativism that some of the critics themselves foster. All right? Some of these guys, especially on the academic side, who come forward with the criticisms, never have to deal with the consequences of their own ideas. And these guys do. These guys do. These guys are the victims of those relativizing ideas. And they can smell it a mile off. And that's what they're stepping away from. They hate it. And that's why they react to these the liberal side in the way that they do. Mm-hmm. The problem with especially the liberal academic critique is that it's real easy to critique when you've got a guaranteed salary and a good retirement. You never, ever deal with the consequences of your own ideas. You're trapped in writing for your peers. And you don't understand that these ideas are fundamentally corrosive and hurt people. And yes, guys, I'm sorry. I feel like telling them this. Maybe they'll hear this. yeah, the church is going to change. The culture of the church is going to change. And it's a lot like National Review and Trump. National Review lost its position as gatekeepers of cultural opinion. Okay?
Yes.
And that's what's happening here. That they set themselves as arbiters of what is true and how it should be understood and practiced in the church. And that's being taken away from them, and they don't like it. They're being marginalized. Okay, so when I hear these things, oh, these are white nationalists and this alarmist talk, I go, you don't have your feet on the ground, man. You got to look at you got to look what's coming in. We've got a lot of quality guys coming in. These guys develop. What's the church going to be in 10 years? There's I can't make the prediction, but I think the church is going to be really flourishing in 10 years because the pain gets healed, man. But the memory of how painful and dangerous that relativistic dislocation really is on the soul, that remains. They want stable lives. There's no place of stability anymore left in the culture. Except for the church, we should be welcoming them in because the church is doing what it's supposed to do. That's how I feel about it.
Yes, amen. Well said. As someone who loves politics, also sometimes to a fault, the National Review and Trump analogy was spot on. The gatekeepers, yes. Yeah. I want to ask you in closing here, but I'll let you, of course, promote the St Paisios Brotherhood. But before we get there, with this influx we've seen over the last several years, newer people like myself now are going to become godfathers, godparents, sponsors to catechumens. If I could selfishly ask your advice on how things to think about once you become a sponsor or godfather or godparent to someone, and many of the people listening that are getting this opportunity as well, what are some things to think about, be skeptical about, be careful about, and be loving about?
Well, if it's a younger man, you are to be a mentor to your godson in a way that a stable man mentors a son. Okay, so you give what you have to give to the man. Okay, and that the relationship then, so it's an ordered relationship, but it's one that's beneficial to you both, because the godson gets the blessing, or the mentee gets the blessing, but so does the mentor in the giving, right? And so what's developed there is the relationship of brotherhood. That's what I would be looking at. This kind of relationship, the relationship of brotherhood, like I said at the outset, it's really forms the conduit, the matrix through which God's healing grace flows. And once you grasp that and you experience that, then you can see why Paul elevates brotherhood so much in Holy Scripture. Because this is what he means by brotherhood, not just a collection of friends, but a means by which God's grace works. Now, the baptismal bond, there is a special bond there. It's not just a formal ritual. It's not just a formal bond. Okay, it's shaped in ritual, which means it has a salvific character to it, and you get to define and flesh that out with the person you're a godfather for. I would look at it that way. This is why the godfather buys the cross. Okay, the godparent buys the cross, and you do other things like bring the towels and stuff, but the cross is the main deal. This is why. And so it's a great honor to be asked to be a godfather, great honor, because the person who's asking you sees something in you. He sees something in you. And then it's a great joy to fulfill, but fulfill it in that dynamic of brotherhood that I just described. And thus, you have a beautiful, fulfilling relationship, and the church is strengthened, and you're strengthened.
Yeah, well said. Father Hans, let's promote the St Paisios Brotherhood, where people can find out anything they'd like to about it.
Yeah, St Paisios, St Paisios Brotherhood.org. And it's in honor to St Paisios, but it's also because he's the one who kind of ordered that it should be established. Yeah, that's why, right? And
you had no choice once you felt that gentleman speak to you.
What's that Yaron that came up to me?
Yes.
I want to say two more things if I can.
Please.
The Ortho Bros, they get hit a lot, but I like their work. I think Jay Dyer does phenomenal work.
Amen.
I think Deacon Ananias does phenomenal work. I think David Patrick Henry does phenomenal work. All right. And, they work according to their own personalities. So there's going to be things you don't like. So what? I work according to my own personality. I do things people don't like. So what? That's real life. But who's doing the work that Jay Dyer's doing?
Right.
In the polemics. He does it for you.
Yes.
He does it for you. Oh, this research guy's brilliant. And it's quality work. As the same with Deacon Ananias. So I was hoping you would ask me that question, because I want to publicly come out and endorse them, and I stand with them. Okay?
Yes.
I want that known. I stand with these men, and I don't care what kind of criticism I'm going to get for it. They're doing good work.
Amen. Yes, well put. I'm glad you included that as well. Father Hans, thank you so much for being here, sir. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, I hope you guys enjoyed this great discussion with Father Hans Jacobse. Men, what about this St Paisios Brotherhood? Let's join up, shall we? And as for this show, click like, subscribe, all of those things. Leave some comments. I got a lot of great comments on the Father Turbo episode from last week. He's always one of my favorites. And this interview with Father Hans has been fantastic too. What a great priest. And next week, should I drop any hints? It's someone who's never been on the show. He's a catechumen, and he used to play some heavy music that I'm very familiar with, and I like still to this day quite a bit. It's going to be a good discussion. That will be next week. Until then, you guys have a good one.
Like the sound of the Counterflow Podcast? Our audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.
This has been